This is kit 28 from the Gakken Otona no Kagaku set, which is the Edo era clock. It's basically lunar based, but the primary idea is that as the seasons change, daylight changes, the amount of daylight. And in ancient Japan, the idea was to track how much daylight was left in order to work the farms. So the clocks were set to show one time from dawn to dusk, and then another time from dusk to dawn. And the old clock, therefore, had to have two pendulums. One pendulum would be set for daylight, and the other one would be set for nighttime. The original clock had a bell at the top, and once an hour the bell would ring. The Gakken modification is to use a small leaf switch on the inside of the clock, where the leaf switch closes once an hour, hooked up to a Japanino, which is kit number 27. What I've done is I've modified an existing clock program that had been made for the Arduino to make it look like the Edo Clock. Now, the modification that Gakken made is to hook up a servo to the Japanino and have the servo bang the bell on the top of the clock. In my case, I've taken one of those singing birthday cards, taken out the sound chip, and hooked it up to the output pin of the Japanino. Interestingly, these birthday card sound chips will run on 4.5 volts, which is very close to the output voltage of the Japanino output pins. So all I need to do is connect the birthday card sound chip to one of the output pins of the Japanino, and when the leaf switch closes, apply voltage to the sound chip. Now, the only real drawback to the Edo Clock is that the leaf switch is really nothing more than two pieces of metal that are being bent towards each other. And it's really, really, really noisy. So that will cause the alarm to go off maybe 5 or 10 times in a couple minutes, which means that you need to put in some kind of debouncing delay in the Japanino program to try to smooth out some of the bounce, some of the noise, and maybe put in a flag that says you can only play the alarm once an hour. But as it stands, it's a fun little toy. The Edo Clock does have a very, very sophisticated mechanical system. It's a 2-cam system that causes the pendulum arms to rise or fall depending on whether or not it's daylight or nighttime. As the cams rotate, one arm goes up past the escapement, the other arm comes down, locks into the escapement, and prevents it from unwinding. Now, the original Edo Clock was weight driven. There we go. You can see that bounce occurs several times during a 1 hour period. So the little switch here is pressing up against a small wedge and that wedge causes the switch to close once an hour. The escapement just simply controls how fast the clock moves based on the pendulum arms that are adjusted with the little weights. As I was going to say, the original clock is driven by a weight system. For our purposes here, the Gakken clock is a wind-up spring. There were actually 3 kinds of clocks back during the Edo period, which is the 1600s to the late 1800s, or mid 1800s. One was basically placed on a small table that had the weight system underneath it. The other was hanging on a wall, and another one would be placed on a bookshelf. The bookshelf form was spring driven, so this particular clock design is specifically for placing on tables or placing on bookshelves. One last shot of the little clock, and it's time to move on to the next kit.